Hey everybody, today I am spilling the tea all about your brand color palette, and I'm going to be going over one of the most important things that you need to know before actually using your brand color palette and trying to implement it into your business. So as a designer who has worked with close to 100 clients, 100 brands, I know that there are going to be some things that I'm going to talk about today that are going to absolutely blow your mind. If you're new around here, my name is Amanda and I am the owner and founder of the Launch Hive Creative. We are a brand and website design studio that work with the bold and badass business owner who isn't afraid to go against industry standards and break the mold. So if that's you, make sure that you hit the subscribe button below because on this channel, we're going to be talking all about how to build and brand your small business. So thing the biggest thing that you need to know when it comes to using your brand color palette is how to use your brand color palette. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see business owners making, is that they don't know how to properly use their brand color palette. And that's what I'm going to go over with you guys today. Before we actually get started talking about your brand color palette, I want to make sure that you have one. So if you do not have one, make sure that you click the link below and you download our free color palette magazine. So within this magazine, I wanted to create brand color palettes for every different type of brand style out there. So whether you are a high-end and elevated brand or you are very playful and quirky, we have something for you in there. So make sure you hit the link below and download that before we go any further. So before we actually get started, let's kind of talk about what a brand color palette actually is. So a brand color palette is a group of colors that you use throughout your brand. And what your brand color palette is going to do for you is it's going to build brand recognition. So when people see your brand color palette, they're going to get to the point where they're going to automatically know it's your brand just by looking at your colors. So before we get any further, again, if you do not have a brand color palette, make sure that you download our free color palette magazine below. 50 free brand color palettes for all different types of brand styles. When it comes to your brand color palette, you should have between 4 and 6 brand colors. I would say no less than 4, no more than 6. That is like a perfect medium there for you to be able to have a multitude of colors to use throughout your brand to start to build that brand recognition, brand awareness throughout your brand. So each color within your brand color palette has a specific role that it should be playing. And this is one of those things that tends to blow people's mind when I tell them this, that yes, each color within the palette has a specific job that it needs to be doing. Within that brand color palette, you should have main colors, neutral colors, and accent colors. So when you have your brand color palette and you have it laid out in front of you, now it's time to assign a job for those colors, right? So you should have a main color, and this is going to be the color that people start to correlate with your brand the most. This is going to be the one that starts to build that actual brand recognition. And when people see this color, they're going to automatically know, oh, that's the Launch Hive, that's Amanda's brand. I know because of this color that she's using within her palette. So that is what your main color should be. This is the one that you're going to use the most throughout your brand. Okay, then you should have some neutrals. This is typically used as background color for graphics on websites, things like that. This kind of like grounds everything together. And then we should have some accent colors. So these are colors that are super, super bold. They pop, they're playful, they're quirky, and they stand out. And these colors are typically used for buttons, call to actions, and any like super important information that you want to stand out. But these colors are only used sporadically, okay? And I'm going to give you some examples of how not using your color palette the right way can change the whole feeling of your brand. This is the color palette that I'm going to use as an example to show you how using your brand colors incorrectly can make your brand feel completely different than you maybe intended it to feel. So in this first graphic, you're going to see that I am using a nice neutral color in the background. I'm using one of our bold colors for the 5 tips, and then our accent color, the yellow there, for like the button type graphic. And you'll see how everything just kind of flows together. It feels good. It feels good to me. And even like we have some brand photography in there that kind of goes with the color palette. That's also a fun fact, little tip there that you want to ensure that you're doing as well throughout your brand. In this second graphic, you'll see that I used the colors completely different. And looking at these graphics side by side, you can definitely feel a difference here. And that's the main takeaway that I want you to get here is like, if you don't use your colors properly, you don't assign them their job, their role that they should be playing, then you're going to come with graphics that just don't feel good, because branding is all about a feeling, okay? And the way that we want our potential clients to feel when they interact with our brand. So if we have no idea how to use our colors, what colors should be playing what role, then we could be running into this issue. Another issue you could be running into if you're not sure how to use your brand color palette is not wanting to even create graphics for your brand because you're not sure what direction to go in. You're constantly changing up because you don't know how to use your brand color palette. So now that you know that each color within your color palette has that specific role, you now have your brand color palette, you're looking that over, assign those roles for those specific colors. And this is another thing that I want you to remember. Those main colors, your primary colors, you should be using those 60% of the time. So like we said before, these colors take up the majority of your brand and they're used the most. Your secondary colors or your accent colors, you should be using those 30% of the time, and your accent colors, you should be using those 10% of the time. So when it comes to your brand color palette, you want to make sure that you are assigning each color a specific role within that palette so that you know exactly how to use your brand color palette, exactly how your brand is going to make people feel when they interact with it. And when it comes to creating graphics, it's going to be easy for you now. You're no longer going to be wanting to pull your hair out because you're going to know exactly how to use these elements throughout your brand. If you have any questions about anything that we covered today, make sure to put it down below. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, make sure that you do that so you can be notified anytime that we post a new video.